Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nedling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Nedling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am really excited to bring to you a very interesting man, Conor Cunneen, the Irishman Speaks. I think you're going to love him. Let me tell you a little bit about Conor. He is the Irishman Speaks. This man has happily was exiled to Chicago, where he says the Guinness is good, the people are friendly, and has been a force-fed more corned beef and green beer than he ever had in Ireland, which I think is hilarious. He's a former marketing VP who now earns a crust as a keynote speaker. Very interesting. Business humorist and consultant who travels and leaves audiences with a smile, a spring in their step, and memorable, actionable takeaways to improve people, performances, and productivity. All this with that awesome smile that he has on his face. Conor is a Chicago humorist speaker of the year for a speech, would you believe, on customer service in San Quentin Prison. That's a story to be told for sure. He is also a recipient of the President's Gold Medal for volunteer service for his work with the unemployed. We're going to talk about you don't have to be funny to be funny. Please join me in welcoming my most honorable guest, Conor Cunneen. Oh my goodness, I just cannot wait for this. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm really looking forward to the chat, Vicki.
Yeah, and we always start with two easy questions. I gave part of it away, but where do you live? Where do you call home?
Right. Well, I actually now live in Chicago, and I tell my audiences that this is actually the back road from Naperville, where I live, just about 30 miles outside of Chicago. And this is the back road from Naperville into Chicago. And people are kind of saying, what? But Chicago now is basically a bankrupt state, Vicki. So this is the condition of the roads.
So funny. And I do know Naperville. It's a very narrow road there too. No tractor trailers coming on that road. So we gave just a little bit about your accolades and things, but I love for you to share what your journey was like that led you from a young man to discover who you are today and why you do what you do.
Okay, delighted to do that. Obviously, Irish, the brand is IrishmanSpeaks, and I play a lot to that now by providing good content to my audiences with some interesting, fun stories around Ireland, but are relevant to the audience as well. And I initially born in County Cork, Ireland, which we say is the real capital of Ireland, by the way. We're proud people down there. I eventually ended up in the United States because I was working as a VP of marketing with a company called Unilever. They transferred me over here to the States, and I've now been working on my Chicago accent, Vicki, for about 25 years. So nailed it, obviously. Yeah. And what brought me over was that corporate position. A few years after I came over, the company wanted me to transfer back to Europe. but for family reasons, my daughter had just started in university here in the United States. I didn't want to mess her up again. So basically, I told in the company to get stuffed. They told me get stuffed, and with a mutual stuffing. So I separated from Unilever. Amicable. I mean, an individual cannot try and override the personnel policy. So I then decided I would not go back into corporate, because I was a little bit tired of corporate at that stage and the bureaucracy that was involved in it. And I am a kind of an independent, freewheeling kind of character. So I just decided I'd go out on my own. Did some initial consulting work on the food service market, was being asked to speak at events, was being asked to come back and speak at the event next year. And the other thing that really made a difference for me, well, two things made a difference for me, Vicky. One is, after I left Unilever put me in a no placement firm for a couple of months, and I saw just the pain and the frustration and the fear that people had who were in job search, who were on six-figure salaries and had been let go, kind of thing. For me, it wasn't a problem because I did not want to go back into corporate. So I offered the job outplacement company to do a couple of lunch and learns, just how to stay motivated. I thought I might be able to do something on that. I did it once. They asked me to do it twice. They asked me to do it 3 times, 4 times. And then I got involved with community groups here in the Chicagoland area, just helping them with advice and staying sane, motivated and productive in job search. And I've been doing that ever since, because the emotional payback from helping people who have been in job search for a long time and landing is just wonderful. It's the most gratifying experience. So that was one area that I realized, hey, I've got messages that connect with people, that helps them to stay better and feel better. And then the other thing was, I did get involved with Toastmasters at the time. I was you're obviously heavily involved as well. I was a pretty good speaker, but I said, let's see what we can do to improve on this. So there was a very good club here in the Naperville area, and I'm still involved with Toastmasters.
Awesome.
Where now we have a wonderful club here in Chicago for professional speakers.
Nice.
So that allows me to actually develop some of my content in 15, 20-minute blocks, kind of thing. But I did some competitive speaking with Toastmasters, won Chicago twice to get to the World Championship semifinals, did the humorist speech competition on customer service in San Quentin jail. And all of those things together helped me to develop the content, the style to be, as I say, Irishman Speaks. Oh, sorry, wrong side. This side. I love that. So
that's awesome. Yes, I am still very much involved with Toastmasters. Just came back from the 100-year anniversary in California for Toastmasters, so and saw a great world champion of public speaking contest. So definitely.
Yes, I saw Dave, who won. It seemed to be an excellent speech. Well, it always is a really good experience. And actually, one of the things I do say to, as I indicated pre-call, that I do a little bit of coaching with professional speakers. I do tell them that getting involved in competitive storytelling and speech making is really good, because when I won Chicago on 2 separate occasions, I developed what I consider to be really good signature stories that I would never have got to the level unless I'd been at club, at the area, at the division, district, etc. And it's a really good way for people to develop a good story, hone it, polish it, and make sure it kind of pops when they get in front of an audience then.
Yeah, and it's important for any speaker, just as you mentioned earlier, about being able to develop the different timing. You know, we have to do our pitch. We might only have 1 or 2 minutes to talk about what we do to maybe intrigue that person, or you know, we may have 5 or 10 minutes, or we may have 15 minutes. So you know, I kind of do a long speech and break it down. Okay, well, this is it as a workshop. This is as a 15-minute. This is a 20-minute, you know, be able to have that. But I think that diversity allows us to get to that point where our stories, a true great storyteller is one that allows us to forget that we're being talked to, but we are in a conversation with them,
Absolutely.
and we
Yeah.
are part of that story. And I think that's where this title of this episode of how you don't have to be funny to be funny is important, because I think people think, well, I have a serious topic that I have to talk about. And you have to take people in a story on that roller coaster.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you can have seriousness, but you need to inject some humor to bring
Yeah.
them, back, and have them on that roller coaster that makes them stay engaged.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the phrase roller coaster, because I actually do use that at times. I say a good speech should be like a good concert. So I'm a huge Springsteen fan.
Oh,
I'd
yeah,
go
yeah.
anywhere to see him. And when you go to a Springsteen concert, I mean, it is like a bit of a roller coaster. He brings it to incredible highs. Then he'll tell a story with some pathos and with some emotion in it, and he just pulls you in and lets you go and pulls you in, and it's like a roller coaster. And I like what you were saying. A good speech should have highs, should have lows, should have emotion, pathos, good stories with a good ending, and leave people, as I say, with a smile in the face and a spring in the step. Not
Yeah.
always that way for every speaker, it's not necessary, but that roller coaster reference is so apt, Vicky.
Yeah. So you say that you don't have to be funny to be funny, which is kind of strikes me as funny. But
Yeah.
can you just elaborate that? I have my thoughts on it, but I'd love to hear first what you have to think about it.
Okay, all right. So the basic idea here is, I mean, I know, and people do know that when you smile, you feel better. When you laugh, you feel better. And there's basic reasons for that, the endorphins in the brain, neurochemicals, etc., just popping and making us feel better. And I do think that if you can, when you're giving a message, if you can make a person feel better,
Yeah.
you're going to connect better with them. They're going to be more engaged. One of the ways to do it is by adding a little bit of humor to your presentation. Now, I'm not talking about comedy. That's a different thing. Humor is where you say something that puts a smile on the audience face or makes them chuckle, that reinforces the message you just previously given them. So you give them the message, you then give a bit of humor, which reinforces that message. They're staying more engaged. They're kind of, oh, I like that idea, etc. And humor is the grease that kind of helps the speech to move and to churn along, I believe. And when I say you don't have to be funny to be funny, the obvious first reaction I get from a lot of people is, well, I'm not funny, I can't add humor to my presentation. And I say, you don't have to be funny to be funny.
Yeah.
What did he say? He said, you don't have to be funny to be funny.
That's right.
The basic idea, Vicky, is that over the last week, you said something to a number of people or different people that put a smile on their face. You heard something from different people that put a smile on your face. What I'm saying to my audiences when I'm speaking to them on this program is capture the humor that you see around you.
Yeah.
And you don't know when you're going to use it, if you're going to use it. You may not use it at all, but if you can capture the humor around you on a regular basis, you'll have a repository of little quips, anecdotes, stories, humorous lines, etc., quotes, that sometimes somewhere when you're looking for an additional piece of content to reinforce the message that you have given, that then will help you to be able to provide the content. You're not going scratching around too much looking for, oh, I need to create a humorous speech. By the way, I actually do say that if this is for Toastmasters in particular, because they've got the humorous speech competition. When you're trying to write a humorous speech, don't try to write a humorous speech. Right. Write the speech, have the message, and then figure out how I can add humor to it. And there's different ways and techniques that I have that do help people to add that humor to the speech.
Yeah. I remember I did a speech about one of the puppies that I had, and I was going through the puppy time where taking her out early in the morning on a rainy day, carrying an umbrella, going around the yard saying, It's okay. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Here you go. Here you go. And it's pouring down rain, and the puppy is not doing what I want. And it's just the whole craziness of you walking around talking to this dog, trying to convince him to go to the bathroom in the rain.
Right.
And it's people relate to it. It's like it's
Yeah.
not really funny. It's not a comedy act, but our lives have funny things that happen to us that maybe aren't funny at the time, but when you reflect back on them, you think, oh my God, how silly did I look doing
Yeah.
that?
And you know that one about the rain now reminds me of a story. My brother lives in New York, and he came over to us in Chicago a few months back, and he was telling us he drove over with his wife. They stopped at some supermarket, and when they were leaving the supermarket, it was pouring rain. And he saw there was two ladies that were on their little motorized shopping carts that were waiting for the rain
Yeah.
to stop as well. So Victor, my brother, goes over to them and he says, ladies, my car is parked over at the far end of the parking lot there. You've got these motorized trikes. Would you go over to the parking lot, to my car in the parking lot, and get my umbrella and bring them back? And they kind of look at him, they go, and then they realize he was totally joking. One of the ladies says, oh, that's very funny. That's very funny. I must write that down. And it was just the line that I must write that down. And I said, Victor, that's what I'm talking about all the time when it comes to humor. Just write it down. You don't know when or where.
You're going to use it.
This might be the first time I've actually recounted that story again, but I remembered it. It's in my iPhone notes somewhere or other, and it popped after you mentioned being out with the dog in the rain, etc.
Yeah, I have a grandson who just turned 5, and every time he comes over, he's always intrigued with scissors and things. Well, his dad has shears to be able to trim his neck and things like that of hair.
Yeah.
And the 5-year-old decided he sees a lot of his cartoon characters have mohawks. So he decided to give himself a mohawk. Not a great one. And so now his head is shaved. And just, but whenever my daughter told me the story, I had to laugh because
Yeah.
it's a story that we know, each of my daughters trimmed their bangs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got a great job, and they had to have a different haircut than they wanted. So it's a story that people relate to, and that's what puts the smile on their face. It may not be hilarious, but
Yeah.
it puts the smile on their face.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea that I suggest to people is, all right, you've got that little story. You can now ask yourself, all right, where might that fit into some message that I'm giving sometime, someplace? And obviously, when it comes to kids and grandkids, virtually everyone in your audience has had kids or grandkids, virtually everyone, or they've been a kid at some stage kind of thing. So it does make it very relatable.
So let's go into some of these humor techniques. What are some of the key things that you teach in your courses to be consistently capturing and creating relevant humor for your stories?
Okay, we'll start with a question, Vicky. I'm looking for a 5-letter word from you. And I'll ask the question, hopefully you'll get the word. So if I say something that I believe is funny, what is it that I hope that you will do?
I will laugh.
Laugh, okay, all right. L-A-F-F.
L-A-U-G-H.
L-A-U-G-H.
Spelling's not our strongest.
Right. So that is the acronym, one of the core acronyms I use that provides 5 concepts that will help people to add humor to their presentation, even if they think they're not funny.
Yeah.
So going briefly through them, the first element of the LAUGH acronym is listen. And basically, we've covered some of that already. Listen to what made you laugh. Listen to what you said that made other people laugh. Capture the humor around you and record it. So listen, capture, record. You don't know when you're going to use it, but you will be able to use it. And Vicky, researchers will tell us that the average adult laughs about 15 times a day. Now, I know your listeners and viewers are above average, so they'll be laughing more than 15 times a day.
That's right.
See, look how differential I am. But the thing is, if over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you try and remember one of those instances that put a smile on your face. Maybe it was reading a book, maybe it was a cartoon, maybe it was a text or an email. You capture it. Over the next 3-4 weeks, you could have 20 different pieces of humor. 17 of them you might never use, but 3 of them you might. And when you try them and they work, you'll be able to enhance it. So the first one is listen. The second one, as I put it, is about, we'll ask you another question. Let's assume that over the last week, so you laugh 15 times a day by 7, so roughly 100 times, and you were at the Toastmasters convention also. So when you were laughing over the last 100 days, do you think it was jokes that made you laugh most, or was it stories and quips and comments that made you laugh most?
Stories for sure.
Stories for sure, yeah. So what we're getting to here is that stories are critical. So what I say to my audiences is that if you can bring anecdotes into your speech, it will make it, what? It's not anecdotes. It's anecdotes. Oh, sorry, it's anecdotes.
Anecdotes.
So, yeah, what I actually do say here with this is that the antidote to a weak speech is a good anecdote.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm doing there is, or a couple of things there. One is I deliberately use the wrong word, and then who's paying attention, I'm getting their attention, and they're saying, this guy is a clown. But what I've done is I've kind of reinforced the anecdote reference, and misusing words sometimes can also be very funny. But what I'm talking about here is a good anecdote has the potential to be humorous. We'll take the next letter of the LAUGH acronym and combine it with anecdote. So we go listen to a good anecdote. And the best and funniest anecdotes are ones where something at some stage was uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when someone tells you a story where everything was perfect, you're not laughing. If someone tells you a story where something went wrong at some stage and no, there's no issues involved in it, you probably are laughing. The person who's telling you that story is laughing as well. I'll give an example of that, Vicky. As a keynote speaker and as an Irishman Speaks, my mission is to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. Yeah. So I would suggest that almost every organization wants to improve their people, their performance, and their productivity. And if I can do it with a smile, that's good. So I speak quite a bit to manufacturing organizations and safety conferences. And let's just assume that for a second, you are a safety conference I'm speaking to, and I'm telling you about the importance of attention to detail. Yeah. Because I want you to come into work with 10 fingers and toes. Yes. I want you to leave with 10 fingers and toes. But to do that, you've got to pay attention to detail for you and for your colleagues. A couple of weeks ago, I was collecting my darling granddaughter, Maggie, who's 6 years of age. You said your grandson is 5. So you know the age group. We collected Maggie from soccer practice. We were taking her overnight. We put her into the back seat of the car and strapped her in. My wife sits into the back seat of the car, as she normally would do when Maggie is there. And then I sat into the back seat of the car. And Maggie hesitates for a second and she goes, Grampy, you should be driving the car. And I said, oh, Maggie, I want to, Grampy, drive the car. So I get to go out of the car. We've got a little problem. We're on child lock, which means we're on Grampy lock, which means I've got to phone my daughter who'd left the parking lot to come back and open the car door for us. Now, so I realized I had a little bit of humorous gold there when I see my daughter get out of her car, walk over towards us, and she's breaking her sides laughing. Now, what has that got to do with you as a manufacturing audience or as a safety audience? The basic message there, gang, is that you have to pay attention to detail. And I would ask the audience, what are the child locks in your organization or in your facility that if you don't pay attention to, you can get into trouble? And again, speaking to you as a safety audience, how many people here in this room have got kids who are in car seats? So maybe 7% of the room might raise their hands. The next time you're putting your child into that car seat, just remember, what are the child locks in my organization that can cause a problem? Or those of you who have got grandkids or nieces or nephews have got who are in the car seat, next time you see them or you're at the traffic lights and you see a kid in a car seat, ask yourself, what is it that are relevant child locks in my organization? And the basic idea now behind that story, Vicky, we cut that, so I'm no longer speaking to the safety audience, I'm speaking to you again. Basic idea there is that, as you said, it's relatable, but with the story you were talking about previously, there's a message to it, but what I'm doing was I'm telling people you got to pay attention to detail, and then I'm reinforcing with an anecdote that was marginally uncomfortable there. It was really funny rather than uncomfortable, but something did go wrong.
Yeah.
So that's what I say to people. Pay attention to the stories that you're telling that's got your audience laughing or people around the water cooler laughing. And almost certainly it's something where things were not perfect, but now you can talk about it.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, with that story, is there some way I can take that story and use that to reinforce a message that I'm giving to my team at work, to my customers, to an audience if I'm doing a keynote presentation?
Well, for sure. So
yeah.
You got L.A.U.G.?
Yeah. All right. G is for the Googler, as I refer to it. Okay. Googler. Right. Okay. Now, here's the interesting thing. I was wondering what reaction I might get there. On one occasion, I don't know when, instead of saying Google, I just said the Googler to an audience. They laughed. So I said, Conor, listen. So I now refer to the Googler rather than Google. And what I tell people is that if you are looking for ideas for humor, just Google on the Bing, which is totally dumb as well, kind of thing. All right. But I heard my brother-in-law use that phrase about 7, 8 years ago when I was in Ireland. And I thought, hey, that's kind of funny. I just wrote it down. So now I tell people, all right, G is for the Googler and Google on the Bing. All right. So if you're looking for some information on, you're doing a presentation on leadership. And we're telling people that we need everyone to work together, and the future is ahead of us and the past is behind us and all the usual jargon. How do I pop it up a little bit? I go onto the Googler or AI and I say, I'm doing this speech on leadership. I want 1 or 2 humorous quotes that I can drop in to reinforce my message, particularly on teamwork, we'll say, or particularly on innovation. And you will probably find something in that area. Another way you could do it is just when you're on Google, type in funny quotes about leadership, funny quotes about marketing, funny quotes about sales, or Google, what did Groucho Marx say about leadership? What did Mark Twain say about teamwork? Something like that. Do a little bit of searching. And then when you're doing your presentation and you're making your serious comment, you can then say, and I would reinforce this comment by the words of that great philosopher, Groucho Marx, for instance. Okay, so you haven't created the humor, you've captured the humor. Yeah. And the final one, and I think you'll appreciate this from your Toastmasters experience as well. The final one is, so we got to listen, anecdote, uncomfortable, Google on the Bing, and then we have got H, which is for he, to ho, ho, ho. Right? And the basic idea here is that if you say something to your audience that gets a chuckle from them, of course, that has them going, he, listen, pay attention, go back over after your presentation and say, all right, what made them laugh? What can I do just to make that pump a little bit more? And how can I go from a he to a ho? Okay. And it could be something as simple as just one additional word. I was doing this yesterday with a group on a Zoom call. And I just gave one example. And when I'm speaking to my audiences, I try to do relatable messages. And a lot of the audiences obviously will have teenagers. So I'm just telling a story about, in one instance where you tell your teenager to do something, you come home 6 hours later, and the teenager is kind of looking at you blank. And as I say, you can see from the teenager's face, where the brain should be. There's an empty space. Just populated by 2 agitated chipmunks running around the place saying, what were we supposed to do? what were we supposed to do? So just that little one there, no, that gets a very good reaction from audiences, especially when there's parents and teenagers
Yeah,
in
for
the room.
sure.
So initially what I did was I said that there was the teenager just as where the brain was, there was a blank space. That got a bit of a laugh.
Yes.
And then I said, next, a few weeks after that, when I was doing it, I said populated by two chipmunks. I sometimes use hamsters because hamsters are funny as well in that.
Yeah, yeah.
But then though, on one occasion, I don't know why I did it, I just dropped in the word agitated chipmunks.
Mm-hmm.
And that just gets them exploding. So it was one word that has allowed me to go from a he to a ho, ho, ho. And it's the same with you when you're doing your presentations. If you know what it was that made them laugh, they're simple little things, exaggeration or expanding it a little bit, or preferably probably tightening it a little bit, will help them to go from a he to a ho, ho, ho.
Yeah,
Well,
you know,
Stephen, laugh.
one that kind of reminds me just of the one of the speakers that didn't win this year, but should have won, went overtime. So that's not a good thing. But Verzi Gatuaco, what he did was not only have the words, but he had the movement, the body movement that made you physically feel what he was saying, if you can
Yeah,
understand.
yeah,
And that made the laughter go from here to here as he exaggerated those movements.
yeah. And if I had been coaching him, I would have told him. So his speech probably when he was rehearsing might have been about 6:50 or 7. And what happens is the bigger the room, the more
Yeah.
people laugh, and it
That's
blows
right.
people's timing out of the water.
Always, always.
I feel so sorry for him, but I think he was badly coached in the sense that people are surprised at when you're in a big room, when something clicks, it goes on for ages. Now, as a speaker, what I do is I love to leave the audience laugh because the more you leave them laugh, the
Yeah.
more likely they are to laugh again the next time.
Yeah.
But obviously, in a situation like that where you've got competitive speaking, God love the guy, and it's so tough to get to that final stage
Yeah.
as well. That I feel sorry for him in that instance. But as you were talking about, I was saying, I bet any money was the laughter. Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah, absolutely. And that's how I coach too, you know. It's and you could just see that he was getting the laughter, and as the laughter grew, he exaggerated more.
Yeah,
And that probably wasn't what he practiced.
yeah,
And so it is so important. Humor is vital for a great story, and you
yeah.
have to prepare for that, the time that it takes for people to come back, because obviously you don't want to go and give that next jewel of the story when people are still laughing at what you just said. So
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And one other simple little trick when you're telling a humorous anecdote, which is the antidote
yes,
to a
yes.
good weak speech, is that never preview what you're going to say. Don't tell them, I want to tell you a funny story.
Yeah,
I mean, tell the story to reinforce your message. Hopefully, they're going to laugh at it. If they don't laugh at it, you're going to feel, oh boy, things
yeah,
are not going right here.
yeah,
So never preface it by saying, tell a funny story. If you're going to show a slide to reinforce your message, don't say, and this is a funny slide. But this might,
yeah,
you could say something like, and this is a slide to reinforce my previous comments, kind of thing.
yeah.
And then you get them laughing.
I think it's the unexpectedness, you
Yep.
know, that it just is in your face, and it's like, oh my gosh, so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
We're losing time, so I want to move along. And you have another concept called CHAPS, CHAPS. What is that all about?
Right now, this is chaps. Is my core messaging is about improving people performance and productivity with a smile. And one of the concepts I've got is having micro goals to build a better teamwork, build a better environment. And we'll briefly go through it. I basically suggest I use acronyms a lot, Vicky, because it's easy for people to
Yeah,
remember.
to
People will
remember.
remember the laugh, word at least. Hopefully
Mhm.
they'll remember the 5 concepts and the behind the LAP acronym. CHAPS provides 5 micro goals that will help people to create a better work environment. And very briefly, what they are is that I reference them as micro goals. I spent a bit of time working with the audience beforehand about how do you feel when you achieve a goal and people feel positive and good, etc.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll give you 5 micro goals to help you feel good and to help your audience feel good. And very briefly, they are. So if someone compliments you, Vicky, you obviously feel positive and upbeat. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what I say to people is, all right, if you feel that way when you're complimented, give yourself make yourself a micro goal that I will compliment one of my co-workers tomorrow.
Mm.
Okay. Now what's going to happen? If you set it as a micro goal, when you hear yourself complimenting that worker, you're going to say, hey, I've achieved my micro goal, and the dopamine kicks in, etc. I feel slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the person you've complimented? They're going to appreciate you more.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to feel a bit more motivated. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to help to create a better teamwork and camaraderie and bonding.
Yeah.
Complimenting people is really important. One of the examples I give is I go out in a bit more detail about sometimes people have difficulty complimenting, etc. And I say, look, you can always find some way to compliment people. You can say something like, wow, your hair doesn't look as bad today as it did yesterday. I mean,
That's a
so
backhanded compliment. Yeah.
that's right. Or another I got from my niece in Ireland via LinkedIn the other day. She'd seen me make that comment on something or other, and so I can now use this when I say this is about kind of appreciating the way people are improving. And she wrote down, she said, yeah, whoa, yeah, you're not as annoying today as you were yesterday. But again, that was something I didn't create that one. Saw it from my niece, listened kind of and recorded it. Okay. So chaps, the first element is compliment. The second element is hear. A second goal is my goal is I will hear the words thank you from one of my work colleagues. Now, almost certainly a few people yesterday said thank you to you, but it goes over your head. But what I'm encouraging you as you're trying to develop a team and an organization is set yourself a goal that I will do something deliberate to hear the words thank you from my team or from our work colleague. So when I hear that word thank you tomorrow, I'll have to have done something to help that colleague. So I realize, hey, I've achieved my micro goal. I hear the words thank you. I feel slightly better because I've achieved a micro goal. The person I worked with is going to appreciate me a little bit more, maybe go the extra yard as well. So that's the second element of the CHAPS acronym. Compliment, hear the words thank you. The third element, Vicky, is address. And as I say, by address here, I do not mean that little pink chiffon dress that I was seen wearing on Facebook over the weekend. That should not have been published, okay? Right. By address, I mean address people with their name when you're in conversation. And I really do believe that the best way for you to connect with people, the easiest way, is to address them with their name. I say this to job seekers on a regular basis. When you go into the interview, make sure that you compliment that team or that organization or the company. You're probably going to hear the words thank you after that. Make sure that in that conversation, you address the interviewer or the recruiter with their name 2 or 3 times. It really helps to make a connection. So we got the compliment, hear the words thank you, address. P is for positive. And positive is basically about, you know, the way we've all worked with Debbie Downers who suck the energy out of the room, and then her twin brother Danny Downer comes in and makes it even worse, sucking the energy out. You can bring energy to a room, though. You can bring positivity to a room by using positive words and positive phrases. And as I say, if you get into the habit of using positive words like amazing, brilliant, cheerful, delightful, energetic, friendly, Guinness. I mean, Guinness is a positive word for Irish people, Vicky. All right. What will happen after a while is you're going to start creating a vibe where people will say, hey, that person is amazing, brilliant, cheerful, delightful, energetic, friendly. Let's go for a Guinness or whatever your beverage of choice is. But it's a deliberate decision that I've created a micro goal that I'm going to bring something positive to the conversation. And when I do that over a period of time, it does shape the vibe and the conversation. And the final element of the CHAPS acronym, so we'll compliment, hear the words thank you, address people with their name, positive words. The final element is the goal is to put a smile on someone's face.
That's right.
And if you can do that, that kind of goes back to what we're talking about in general with the adding humor to your presentation over there. It's basically people are going to feel better. You're creating a better vibe, and taking those 5 micro goals, chaps, will help everyone to feel better and create a better teamwork, etc. I do a keynote around that. I do workshops around it as well, and it does get very good response because it's simple to relate to. Now, not always simple to implement, I accept that. But if I'm doing it with an organization and get a number of people to buy into it, it reinforces each element of it there.
Yeah. You know, and in a team environment too, as people do start to embrace that, you'll notice a difference in their effectiveness, and then that, you know, they're leading by example. And so others will start to complement their style by doing it themselves.
Yeah, most definitely. So the CHAPS acronym is a really powerful way to build employee engagement, retention, and changing the behavior in an organization.
Well, time has flown by, and it's time for us to share your contact information with the audience. If you are just listening, you know you need to go grab a paper and pencil. You should have been taking notes all along because there were such a lot of gifts given to you today. But if you haven't done so, all this information will be on my YouTube channel in the show notes. So please do subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com website. So Conor Cunneen is the Irishman Speaks. You can see him on IrishmanSpeaks.com. On LinkedIn, he is Irishman Speaks. Facebook is Irishman Speaks Conor Cunneen, all initial cap. Instagram is Irishman Speaks. Twitter is Irishman Speaks, initial cap. And Pinterest is Irishman Speaks, all small letters. YouTube is at Irishman Speaks. And yes, TikTok is also Irishman Speaks. I'm going to turn it over to that Irishman to talk to you about what you can find on his website and where he spends the most time in social media. Conor, it's all yours.
All right. Well, the easiest way to connect with me is via my website, Irishman Speaks. And I've got a lot of content there about the programs that I do. And you can also learn about adding humor to your presentation and get a little handout providing 53 humorous quotes and flubs and mistakes. 53 humorous quotes and flubs that you can use in any presentation. Quotes from people like Groucho Marx, Will Rogers, Winston Churchill, Barack Obama, some of them mistakes, some of them deliberate, some of them humorous, etc., that you can add to any presentation at Irishman Speaks.
Awesome. Conor, it's just been such a pleasure. I could talk to you all day. We have to find a way to connect in person so we can share funny stories with each other and continue to talk Toastmasters. But thank you for sharing so much of your great wisdom for how we can be funny without being funny.
An absolute delight, and enjoy your 5-year-old grandson, because he's going to be the fount of some of the humor you'll be able to use going forward as well, Vicky.
So I've got 2 of them. I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, both boys. And yes, they are the best thing. I will tell anyone that if they are ever feeling down and low, to go to a toddler, or I mean a 3 to 5-year-old t-ball game.
Yeah.
And you will not stop smiling, and your mouth will hurt from that because it is the best time ever. And again, all they're doing is playing t-ball, but it is so much fun.
Most definitely. A friend of mine says that grandchildren are God's reward for not killing your kids.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The best job in the world. As always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Netling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Netling. where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.